Welcome to this Astro Priestesses Roundtable. We are recording this on the day of the Aquarius full moon. It is a very powerful full moon, and in some traditions is considered a blue moon because it's the third full moon in a season of 4 full moons when we usually only have 3 full moons in a season. Now, I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. It just makes no sense to me that it's considered to be the third full moon of the season because we have 3 full moons every season, from an equinox to a solstice to an equinox. They happen, there's 3 of them each time. The thing that doesn't happen very often, it only happens about every 33 months, is that you have 4 full moons in a season. So I would think next, the 4th full moon in the season would be considered the blue moon. Don't ask. So I don't understand why they chose that. The other thing about this is that there was a full moon at the solstice at 1 degree Capricorn. Then there was a full moon last month on July 21st at 29 degrees Capricorn. And we're going to come back to that 29-degree Capricorn piece in a little bit. But that happened. So there were 2 full moons in a sign, and that's actually rare and significant to have 2 full moons in a sign. And that also only happens about every 33 months. So why this one's considered the blue moon by astronomers and astrologers does not make sense to me. I just wanted to say that. And that this is an Aquarius full moon. So it's about the unexpected, and in Uranus exactly square the sun and the moon, and Mercury with the sun. And there's so many amazing things happening with this, with Uranus exactly square, all of that to the degree. And so what's the unexpected things that are happening? We don't know because we're recording it during the time, but it'll be interesting to look back and see what happened at this full moon. And it's really taking us into the Virgo solar season. And that's going to happen on August 22nd when the sun moves into Virgo. And something that's really interesting, and we've probably shared before, is that when the sun moves into Virgo, it is with the star Regulus, the heart of the lion. And this is something that has been happening since 2011, when the seasonal sign of Virgo started overlaying the star Regulus at the end of November of 2011. And I think it was Dane Rajar he thought that that was like the beginning of a new age when the star was going to be overlaid by this sign, because each placement in the sky, so we could say this star had been overlaid by Leo for 2,160 years. And now it's being overlaid by Virgo, and has been since 2011. So the last, what, 13 years? It's been overlaid by that. It hasn't moved very far. It's still at 0 degrees. It takes 72 years for it to move a degree. So for a long time now, every time the sun's moving into Virgo, it is going to be with this star. It's one of the 4 royal stars of the ancients. It is the heart star of the lion, and it is one of the closest stars to the ecliptic, so it's often occulted by the moon. And it's bright, and it's really easy to see in the sky. Of course, you can't see it right now because the sun's there. But still, the energy of the sun transmitting the mysteries of the heart energy. So we can imagine, here we are at the full moon, the sun is at 27 Leo, and so it's very close. It's within 3 degrees of Regulus, and so it's already starting to transmit the energy of this heart star to the planet. And Mercury's retrograde currently with the sun right now has also been transmitting. It's passed this star twice, and it's going to pass it a 3rd time this month. And I forgot to look up the exact date on that, but when it comes back into Virgo, I might have that somewhere actually, or not. But anyway, comes back into Virgo, it'll be with Regulus again. So this star is like center stage right now, and will be for at least the next week or so. And the other thing is that if we think about the Virgo mysteries, so the heart star of the lion, it's like, how are we living our life from our heart? How are we following our heart? How are we expressing from heart energy? And so Oh, thank you, Jamie. September 8th is when Mercury goes back into Virgo. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, so September 8th. So we have this energy really present with us up until that point when Mercury's going back across Regulus, and the messenger giving us the message from this. So we're getting the messages now, and it's really about following our hearts, following the heart energy, and leading with our heart. I think is a big theme right now. And then the other thing about Virgo is that this is the energy that has to do with the patterning of life. So in Native culture and other cultures too had an imagery of Spider Woman who weaves the web of life. And she is how are we weaving the web at this time? And when the sun is there, and we'll be there for the next 30 days, starting August 22nd, taking us into the season of the equinox, we've got Spider Women helping us to reweave, because whenever the web is out of balance, she goes in to reweave it to bring it back into balance. And so we could imagine that that's the opportunity that we have. And of course, Venus is in Virgo as we speak on August 28th. It's going to be at 29 degrees of Virgo opposite Neptune. So how are we dreaming into and reweaving this reality? So good. And then Venus will go into Libra on August 29th, and we'll be at the equinox point where the sun will be, and when we go into the September equinox for the Libra solar month. So all of these things are happening. I think I'm going to leave it here and pass it along. But the biggest thing I really excited to talk about is the Pisces full moon happening on September 17th. So we'll fill in the pieces and we'll come back to that. So passing it along.
I love that you brought in the Spider Woman and the rebalancing of the story and just the overall emphasis of the heart, because that is so needed right now. I just keep being brought back to, even in our bodies, doing yoga, we're always told, lead with the heart. If you're doing a bend, you bend the knees and you lead with your heart. And there's all of these aphorisms and things that we say, but they're linked to safety. So when we lead with our heart, certain muscles are holding, and then we're more secure in our spine. And so there are reasons that it also makes sense physiologically too. So kind of seeing how do our bodies kind of mirror our emotional and spiritual mental needs at this time, especially with all of this Uranus and Taurus energy that's unexpected, unpredictable. It really feels like we're getting this opportunity to integrate it all, which I think will be a big theme for this eclipse season that we'll talk more about. Anytime we come into Virgo season, it's that yin mutable earth. We're looking at how all of the pieces fit together, and how maybe do we get to reorganize them or take them apart and look at them a little bit differently, especially because we're coming into this Virgo season with Mercury retrograde. I love looking at the ingress chart. So when the sun enters Virgo, Mercury is at 23 degrees Leo retrograde, perfectly trine Chiron, wounded healer, sensitive healer, at exactly 23 degrees Aries. So that's a perfect fire trine. And both Leo and Aries have a lot to do with the heart, have a lot to do with fire, creativity, spirit, and also literally in the body, like how is our energy moving and healing through the body? Like, is it pumping? Is it moving? And we've been in so much change, but it feels like we're getting this opportunity with Virgo season to really see how is it all coming together. That's the hope, right? Because it can feel very random, but it feels like the opportunities, if we slow down, listen to what is really happening in our bodies and really get to see the pieces start to come back together. One of my favorite Virgoan statements is, it will all start to make sense. Because Virgo is hosted by Mercury. Virgo wants to figure it out. Virgo wants to know the reason. It can be so kind of scary, actually, for Virgo energy if you have strong Virgo in your chart when you don't know and you're trying to plan for the future, you're trying to form a strategy. And the strategy right now is very inclusive. There's not a one size fits all strategy. It's like day by day. We also have, upon the ingress, the moon is in Aries conjunct the North Node. So this is another big theme of trusting our instincts and kind of following that flow, our physical impulses, and trusting ourselves and cultivating that confidence is a big theme this year. And goddess asteroid Juno is conjunct the South Node. And Juno is relationships, karmic agreements, contracts, and she rules a lot of other things too, but that's kind of what is coming up the most, I think, with Libra, and kind of updating those karmic agreements, releasing certain ones that maybe we've felt very attached to or felt beholden to, and just getting to integrate those relational dynamics in a lot healthier of a way, but from this more fresh, awakened, heart-centered perspective. So I'm really looking forward to this Virgo season. I feel like we spoke about this right before we came on, that it's like, how are we already back to eclipse season? Like, so much has happened. It's just been one transit after the other. And I do feel like while there's such an intensity of energy moving, and that's very evident if you are following what's happening in the world. But personally, every individual person I'm talking to is also saying, yeah, 2024 has been kind of hard. There's been a lot going on. It's hitting us hard. But it feels like with some of the transits that we have coming in this month, like Mars entering Cancer later on, Venus entering Libra, that there's still that invitation to slow down, because if everything else is moving really fast and we have all these changes, um, our point of power, how we can influence it and not kind of feel scattered, overwhelmed, and swept up in it is, I think, really to slow down. So Mars in Cancer, I think, gives us that opportunity, so that we'll be hopefully more stable, ready, as much as we need to be, to approach the eclipse season coming up near to the end of the month.
I love that, Nora. And what you're sharing really makes me think of like to me, one of the main themes of this Mercury retrograde, which we'll still be working with this very first part of Virgo season, because I think Mercury stations direct on August 28th, is the starting in Virgo, going into Libra, is clearing out like distractions that our mind can attach to, right? Because Virgo, it's a detail-oriented sign, which is beautiful when we're paying attention to the details that matter. But sometimes with Virgo, right, we can get stuck on all the details that we can miss the bigger picture, or we get stuck on irrelevant things. I mean, just there's more transits that are actually weaving together, speaking to this, but we're really being asked to like release the need to maybe get stuck on small details, the need to be right, especially like in our interpersonal dynamics. There's a lot with like the Jupiter and Gemini. We are just coming off of the Mars Jupiter, or the Mars Jupiter conjunction and Gemini. There's a lot that we're being asked to kind of release the things that maybe actually don't matter, so we can stay connected to the bigger picture. And with the Mercury retrograde ending in Libra, right, staying connected to our heart. And Kaylin, you also spoke about the heart with Regulus there, at 0 degrees of Virgo as well. And so, and I think that's so important, as there's especially this with Jupiter and Gemini, which is, over this next year. Gemini is also a sign along with Virgo, right? Where we can pay attention to details. It's like we want to take in all the information we can so we can learn, and then we can integrate and synthesize, take in the information in Gemini, then integrate and synthesize over and Virgo. But with Jupiter and Gemini, we might have this, more of like a shadow thing, as we just want to take in information, take in all the details, but then we can get like really lost in the details and stuck in dogma. It's actually about kind of transcending beyond that. And with Jupiter and Gemini, I feel like there's something really powerful about the wisdom, right? Jupiter's wisdom, the wisdom that comes from the beginner's mindset, the wisdom that comes from curiosity, asking questions, listening. Listening is actually just as important to Gemini energy as like speaking and talking and sharing. That's the other side of the, right, of the communication. And Jupiter just spent a year in Taurus, you know, May 2023 to May 2024. When Jupiter was in Taurus, we were all really invited to expand into our embodied wisdom. So now we're taking all that embodied wisdom, bringing it into Gemini. And it's like, how can we keep that embodied wisdom and have the beginner's mindset, have the curiosity? And one thing that I was really actually tuning into as you were talking about Regulus, Kaylin, is that Vesta is actually going to be moving into Virgo on, let me see here. I think it's August 24th. Vesta moves into Virgo, and she's not been in Virgo for 4 years. 2020 was the last time. 2020 was the last time that she went into Virgo. And so I kind of consider Vesta, like, I feel like Virgo is her home temple, along with, you know, Mercury, you might say. But to me, like, Vesta, there's this beautiful resonance with Virgo, because she is, you know, Vesta is about sacred devotion. She is about sacred service, stoking the sacred flame of our heart, doing the rituals and the ceremonies to keep that flame in our heart alive, so we can stay devoted to our sacred purpose, our sacred service. She is, you know, the hearth, the home as well. But with Vesta being there, aligning with Regulus, I feel like there's such a powerful invitation to stay in devotion to our heart, to perhaps, it would be a beautiful time around, if it aligns with you or resonates with you, doing some type of sacred ceremony, or even integrating some daily ritual into your life to support staying connected to your heart and what lights you up, you know, around our purpose. I love, Kaylin, you actually posted a Facebook post that really resonated with me. Our purpose is our presence. Like, I feel like that's the integration with the Pisces, with the Virgo. It's not actually what we're doing, it's our presence. But then what rituals and ceremonies can we bring into our daily life that are going to connect us to our presence, so we can actually be grounded and embodied in our presence? And so for me, the main invitation here is, what can we do to support staying connected to our heart and being in devotion to our heart, and not get pulled away and all the distractions, all the polarity, and not getting tossed in the waves of all of that? Because there's probably, like you said, like, we're filming this in that Aquarius full moon, exactly square Uranus. There's probably going to be a lot rippling on the world stage, particularly over this next solar month, especially with Pluto going back to 29 Capricorn, this last little dip in Capricorn. We're going to see kind of the old world, or the old system, the old structures, maybe trying to make a last grab to, like, try to keep that old world kind of in place. Although, of course, we know, anybody who's looking at astrology, we are in the alchemical transformative cauldron, and we're transforming into something better for our world. But those that are kind of still connected to the old world might be kind of grabbing on for the last, trying to keep it going, even though it won't work. So it will be very interesting to see what happens on the world stage.
The last gasp, as they say, right?
Yeah.
So that was brilliant. And I love what you said about the heart, and brought it, and bringing in Vesta going into Virgo as well, and connecting with Regulus. And something about Regulus that has been said by people who look at the star energy. This is like an old perspective, so I don't know, but I think there's something to it, is that it has to do with the Hall of Records. And that in the Sphinx, and supposedly they built the Sphinx so that when the equinox sun was rising, the Sphinx was looking at itself rising. That constellation was rising way back when they built it. And so the Sphinx was, the Sphinx was looking at itself in the sky as it was coming up at an equinox point, which is happening again. That was the spring equinox. Now it's starting to happen at the September equinox. That's the constellation that's rising. So the Hall of Records supposed to be in the Sphinx, and they've been trying to prove it or disprove it. They haven't done either. necessarily, but I think of the Hall of Records as in our DNA. And so we carry the Hall of Records within us, that our DNA carries all those records, so we can tune into that. And I think that when planets are near or with Regulus, that's a time for us to tune more into that and see what information is within us that we can tune into. So we're not dependent and always externally being referenced, but we become more internally referenced, which is great. So, and on September 1st, as Jamie was speaking into, is when the Pluto's going back to 29 degrees Capricorn, where the full moon was in July. It was at 29 degrees Capricorn. And it'll be there till November 19th when it finally goes back into Aquarius and stays there for the next 20 years. So this is just a few weeks of this Capricorn piece. And I was thinking about this morning on my morning walk, and I was feeling into what seems like the powers behind the scenes. So we see what's going on. I think is a lot of what's going on in the political arena is a distraction for what's really going on behind the scenes. And it seems like there's a lot that's there that's wanting to have its final or to have to contain, or I guess maybe what I'm trying to say is maintain its control, that the control that it's had, that we haven't necessarily even been aware of how much control is going on there, but it can't last. And I found myself asking the energies of this full moon to say, if it's doing harm, it can't last. It can't continue. It cannot continue. And that all people need to be honored and valued and validated for their existence. And again, I love that you said, Jamie, that our purpose is our presence. So how are we being present to show up and be in our hearts and come with that energy? Because that will change the world, and it can change it pretty quick. So with that, I'm just going to jump into the full moon. Nora, you said something about talking about the Venus Mars square. So I'm going to leave that for you. Okay, but this full moon coming up. So we're a month away from it, from the time of this recording. On September 17th happens to be the day that the U.S. Constitution was signed into law, I guess, or was signed by those who were creating our country at the time. It was signed and sealed and delivered on that day. And September 17th, 1787 was the day that was brought in. And so just want to see if I can find this really quick. Yeah, here's the preamble to the Constitution. And what I feel like this is the time that it's time to really honor and respect the noble intention that was created at that time. So it says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." And that is a high ideal that has not been honored. There hasn't been justice for all. It hasn't been the things that we've talked about. It's been for the elite, and it's always been that way. So it's time now for us to really energize this intention. And I think this full moon is a powerful time to do it. It's a perigee full moon, also called a supermoon, meaning it's closest to the earth. So its impact on the earth is big. It's also, in my opinion, the blue moon. The fourth full moon of the season. So that doesn't happen every season. And it's and the moon is sitting between Saturn and Neptune. So Saturn is about form, Neptune's about the dreams. How are we bringing the dreams into form at this full moon? Just a thought to think about. And then the sun will be with the sun that was on, it's like a solar return for the US Constitution. So the sun will be very close to the exact degree where it was when the US Constitution was signed. And it's also, so this blue moon effect, the perigee supermoon effect, and the Pisces full moon sitting between Saturn and Neptune. And so also a partial lunar eclipse, and it's very, very partial. So something about a lunar eclipse that you may or may not realize is that the reason we see the moon get darkened is because the earth is between the sun and the moon. And so it's the shadow of the earth. We're looking at our own shadow on the face of the moon. This is just going to be a little piece of it, a little tiny piece of it happening, but it does open the eclipse window. And it also accelerates and energizes our intentions and what we're intending and holding on to at that time for what's being illuminated and where we're seeing our shadow with that full moon. So I think that's probably enough to say for now.
So this whole season is very mutable, that the lunar eclipse in the mutable signs, Virgo, Pisces, and even if we just come back to the way that Virgo season opens, at Virgo itself being mutable earth, making the changes on the earth plane, but we've also got the Mars, Jupiter in Gemini, we've got Venus in Virgo upon the ingress, we've got Saturn in Pisces, there's, the mutable grand cross that happened, before this month. So we're still reeling in all of this change energy. And I think one of the ultimate lessons, and we have so much mutable energy, is to not really be attached to anything. It's, I think, a little bit, anxiety inducing, but how are you being invited to strengthen your faith or strengthen your trust or become more present time consciousness, not having to know all of the answers, because it's like as soon as we think it's one thing, it's going to become a different thing. That's what really happens with the mutable signs, and it's so like day by day. So really just finding, those rituals that will help you ground into yourself and not having to have these rules. I think that's what Pisces, the Saturn in Pisces, and then the full moon, partial lunar eclipse in Pisces is saying, have what's going to work for you in a daily sense kind of set up, but not having to be so rigorous or rigid that it's going to look one way or it has to be one thing. Find your points of peace in many, many ways, because there's no way to really grab on to anything. And that, I think, if we tune into that kind of invitation on the collective scale, what does that do? It feels like an opportunity in a way, even though it can really, it feels like something's like sand moving through our fingers. We want to hold on. That's a big part of our nature. Humans, we have, the basic needs. We require certainty, but a big part of us in our evolutionary journey requires uncertainty. So this is, I think, a time to embrace the uncertainty, and how do we become more resilient and stronger within all of that. So the Venus Mars, I think, is really interesting as well, especially how we open up the season, because they're the planetary hosts of the North and South Node. So they have a lot to say about what is karmically shifting and moving through us. And they also represent the masculine and feminine, and how, you know, how many of those kinds of conversations are you witnessing? Kind of older conversations coming into the present, new ways of talking about relationships between masculine and feminine. How is that playing out politically? All the things that went on during the Olympics. Like, there's a lot of men's and women's issues, and how they might be battling, and that's the nature of a square. The squares have the nature of Mars, and so there's battling, but there's also this opportunity to be a little bit more creative within that, and not feel like we have to pick these very polarized sides around things, but how do we get to have a more open-minded conversation around things, and again, not feel like we have to create these rules. The Saturn in Pisces, especially retrograde, is not really like any rule that we create right now for ourselves, that we're trying to, we create rules to create safety. A lot of those rules might actually dissolve anyway. So again, it's another nod to not being overly attached, but still engaging in the conversation to the degree that it is necessary for you. And then, finding the conversations that are really most important for you, because it is so easy to get, like you said, Jamie, like pulled into the distractions, pulled into everything. I think the Pluto going back into Capricorn, we've said this so many times in this sphere. And I think this is something that Mara talks about a lot, as Capricorn, one of the wisdom pieces is make sure you know what is your mountain to climb. What is your issue to confront? What is important for you to put your time and energy and attention into? Because that is where your point of power is. And so that is a really big piece of this. Also, that lunar eclipse involves this beautiful, grand Earth trine with the Sun and Uranus and Pluto all in these final degrees of Earth signs. And the final degrees always denote some level of mastery. So hopefully, what we can cultivate around faith and flow will ultimately produce a greater internal security, even if we're not witnessing that external, continuity or security.
Oh, I love that. That's so good. And, as I'm sitting here, as I've been sitting here throughout our session, like I've been kind of noticing that my camera is like kind of fuzzy, like kind of blurry. I think my I think my baby's had his hands on the lens, but I kind of just got it though. I feel like with that lunar eclipse that we're going to have, where the moon is going to be conjunct Neptune retrograde within a few degrees, I feel like there's an invitation for something that's actually been a little fuzzy in our awareness to come into clarity, because Neptune does represent our connection to the higher realms, the higher dream, like really, I think it's Maurice Fernandez says the timeless truth is actually like what Neptune represents. And I love that. And to get to that, we have to clear out our lens of illusion through our ego. And so this is why Neptune is also connected to illusion or delusion or deception, because to get to that actual pure Neptune, we have to clear those out. And we all have illusions and deceptions and delusions in the way that we see reality through our own conditioning, where we really forget our connection to something higher, to source, where we really forget our greatness of who we truly are. And so I feel like there might be some way that we've been perceiving reality through some illusion that's actually maybe been holding us back or keeping us stuck and stagnant, or really preventing us from really like opening up and letting that higher dream birth through us. Because that's, to me, like what it's so much about with Pisces. It is like Kaylin, like you spoke to, our presence is actually more than like the doing anything. It's about opening up and letting that higher dream birth through us, and us being that chalice, that vessel, that actually it's much easier to it's so much easier to be in alignment with what we're meant to be in alignment with, like our soul's intention for being here, than it is to be out of alignment. It's a lot of the illusion and deception that actually leads us to believe that it's easier to stay out of alignment than to be in our alignment. But when we actually just let go of those, like Uranus, the resistance and the attachments to staying in our comfort zone, even when our comfort zone is actually, like, even when it's actually leading to like our own, like maybe emotional unwellness, like it's so much easier to let go and let flow, even though we don't realize it. And I feel like with this full moon, something is wanting to, that's been within our unconscious, right? Kaylin, you spoke about the shadow of the earth projecting onto the moon. Something that's been within our own unconscious is wanting to come up to conscious awareness so we can have clarity. So then we can really like let go, let flow, open up and receive that higher dream and let it move through us. Because I'm like really experiencing it in my own life, like that I've really noticed. I've since the last eclipse season, I've been working with a lot of like story around like kind of guilt and shame, and like feeling like there's things I've done wrong that have kind of led to like a really challenging situation in my life. There's a lot more kind of like pieces to it. There's a lot of perspective to this, but when I finally noticed over like the last month, like letting go of some of that story and just holding myself and like self-compassion, it's like as I've let go of that story, like the amount of like synchronicities that I've noticed coming into my life. It's been like, wow, there's this big synchronicity here. There's that big synchronicity. Like I've had like all of these, like, I mean, it was like 5 in a row, you know, usually I'm like, wow, three good things happen in threes. And then it was like another synchronicity and another synchronicity. It's like, I noticed it was letting go of that story of like the guilt that I was holding. And so I really feel there's something that, and it will take like taking a look at our unconscious, but I feel like there's something, if we can take a look at it, there's something that wants to come into clarity about, wow, like it's actually so much easier to receive that higher dream and essentially what we're meant to be aligned with in this time.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, so Nura, I love that you said certainty and uncertainty, because I had an experience recently where I was certain that I'm completely uncertain. And clarity, so clarity sometimes is a roadblock, because if we're so focused on what we're clear on, then it can be a roadblock. But if we're, but also so I'm thinking, well, but there's different kinds of clarity. So how are we open to a greater cosmic clarity that isn't necessarily this world or three-dimensionally based? It's something bigger than that, which just feels like what we're being set up for in this. So I love that. And I just feel like that the other thing about rules and there, I think it's in the Pirates of the Caribbean, where they say not really rules, it's more like guidelines, which I think is a really good Capricorn kind of way to move into. It's like, it's not so much the rules. And why also I feel like we need to move away from the idea of rulership, and that we move into the idea of resonance. So the planets resonate with certain signs. They don't necessarily rule them, because rules sounds like patriarchal, old, that we're moving away from. So how do we get to a place of experiencing and recognizing the resonance? Like, this planet really resonates. They're so similar. They really resonate with each other, but each planet is equally important in all the signs. They just have a little more integrating to do, and a little more that needs to be processed in order to, when we have a planet going through a sign that's like really different, then it's energy, or those energy of the sign. So that's just something I've been working with a lot lately as well. And how are we looking at new guidelines, and that the guidelines can be flexible, so that we don't get stuck in this way of how we think it has to be. So I just love all that's been said, and I'm just inviting us all to kind of wrap up what we've said. If you have any additional things that we missed, or something quick that we can finish this up with.
I loved what you said about the resonance and every planet having resonance in signs that maybe are not traditionally associated with them. And I just wanted to go back to the lunar eclipse and point out that there's also a Mars Ceres opposition happening that's also perfectly square the nodes. And Mars is in Cancer, so that's in the opposite sign that it's usually very strong in. But Ceres, the goddess asteroid of the Great Mother and cyclical wisdom, is in Capricorn. And so it really feels like there's this very wise elder mother energy coming in with the Mars masculine that's actually being, I think, maybe holding more of the inner child role. So maybe this is a beautiful eclipse season to do that inner child healing work in relation to the masculine that we all have. We all have some element of, learning how to take aligned action that is not, power over, or like competitive in a way that is like, there can only be, one right way to win. Things like that we might typically associate with Mars competitive nature. It feels like there's more of a wisdom being offered here. And especially with that pull between the North and South node, and Mars being the ruler of the North node in Aries, it feels like we get this greater balance. And anytime we're working with the cardinal signs, we're starting something new, we're initiating. And so that cardinal energy of initiation kind of blending with the mutable energy of the Virgo Pisces, blending with the grand Earth trine with the outer planets plus the sun. There's a lot of different moving pieces that I think are really inviting this more holistic, whole self piece to the table. So I think what you said, Kaylin, is so perfect. It's like, how do we get to talk to all of the different parts of ourselves, who within ourselves, you know, our inner community board is typically, you know, the one with the loudest voice and the one taking the lead. And where do we maybe get to listen to some of the other parts that have, you know, played maybe more of an observing role, but maybe are getting that opportunity to lead a little bit more now, because how might their different perspective, their different voice contribute to the change that we really are ready for?
Ah, so powerful. And one transit I just want to speak to that maybe someone spoke to, I did have to run and find my computer charger 'cause I forgot to put my charger in when we started, was just a note on September 3rd, we have Venus conjunct the South Node at 6 degrees of Libra. So you might notice what's coming up in your relationships at that time. It's a really powerful, there might be some karmic things coming up for karmic completion and resolution to move on to, you know, the next phase of our evolution. So you might notice, like, what are there things within your relationships, dynamics perhaps, that you're ready to release and to birth and create a new way of relating and being? So lots up for karmic things with relationships then. And I just, you know, to me, one of the if I could just offer an invitation, is to just throughout Virgo season, Virgo is, you know, it's a sign of ceremony. It's a sign of living life, like it's a sacred ceremony and bringing the sacredness into all the little daily aspects of our life. So perhaps of preparing food, eating a meal, doing our dishes, folding laundry, we can actually bring sacredness and ceremony into all of it. Even in the most mundane moments of life, there is magic and mystery in the mundane. And so I feel like that's so powerful, especially this Virgo season where there's so much happening astrologically that we've been experiencing. Find those little daily rituals, practices, whatever it is. Maybe it's waking up and just bringing your hand to your heart and expressing gratitude to be awake and alive for another day. Like, whatever it is, I feel like having those practices, and also remembering to integrate those little things that support your wellness, whatever that is for you, whether it might be a time to kind of realign with clean eating, you know, maybe it's exercise or yoga, qigong, movement. Maybe it's just going outside every day and getting your feet on the earth or resting with your back against the tree, going out and observing the stars, observing the sunrise, the sunset. Virgo is that connection, right, between earth and sky. I love, you know, as Kaylin, you've said, like reading that sacred patterning of earth and sky. So finding those little things to bring that grounding ceremony and ritual and sacredness into our daily lives.
Oh, wow, this is so good. Thank you. Thank you for all that you've shared with us today, both of you. And also, can't wait till we we meet again to look at what's coming next, because it just seems like it's building. Each month has been building on this last year, over this last year so far. So it's really been amazing. So everyone have a great Virgo solar month. Till we meet again.
Bye.